Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 136, Charizard's Burning Ambitions. The episode begins with Ash and the gang trekking through some mountains, complaining about how much their feet fucking hurt. Ash mentions how he wished he had as many badges as he did blisters, inferring that he had a lot of fucking blisters, and Misty comments that there was no way that could be possible, as Ash could barely win any badges since all of his victories recently had been against Team Rocket, with the exception of Faulkner. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang, and they overheard Misty say this, taking this as an insult to their skills. However, Jesse and James admitted that Misty had a point. Even when Misty then mentions that if the Pokemon League gave out badges for being Team Rocket, the badges would lose all their value. Team Rocket then contemplate if they truly were just useless fucks, and if they should abandon their quest to capture Pikachu, and try and capture someone else's Pokemon for a change. James then adds further reasoning to this idea by stating how Ash and the gang had 12 Pokemon altogether, including Ash's most powerful one, Charizard, which meant that they obviously wouldn't stand a chance. Hey, maybe they were finally realizing this. Back with Ash and the gang, Ash was bragging about how he could win any battle with Charizard and Pikachu, not just Team Rocket. Brock and Misty retort, though, that all Ash seemed to use against his strong opponents was Charizard, and that was kinda unfair, stating that he should use some of his weaker Pokemon as well, to give them a chance, as well as his opponents. When Team Rocket overhears this, they instantly shout out in agreement, not caring if that meant that they got spotted, just wanting Ash to use weaker Pokemon for once. A woman overhears Team Rocket's yelling, and questions where the noise came from, and loudly calls for her Charizard, Charla, to come out and help her look for the source of the sound. As if on cue, her Charizard responds to the call by firing out a large flamethrower, along with two other Charizard also firing out flamethrowers, although they don't come along. Brock then spots these flamethrowers and heard the woman's calls, causing him to look in his guidebook to see where they were, to which he reveals they were in a place called the Charcific Valley, that was a natural reserve well known for being a Charizard habitat that is officially off limits to tourists. Brock decides to respond to the calling, to call whoever was calling over to them, and it works, as the woman makes her way over to them and introduces herself as Liza, a Charizard trainer who is in charge of the Charcific Valley. Liza then reveals that she knew of Ash and his Charizard from their victory at the Violet City Gym, and states that she knew that he had a Charizard anyways, as she could smell the Charizard's scent on him, cementing that she was for sure a Charizard trainer. Knowing that Ash must be fond of Charizard as well, she invites them to visit the Charcific Valley, and although Ash is a bit hesitant due to being scared if a lot of the Charizard would be like how his was, being all wild and disobedient, Brock convinces him to go, stating that he had a crush on Liza. Liza then tries calling for her Charizard, Charla, yet again, so that she can transport Ash and the gang to the Charcific Valley. Charla shows up with a pink bow in its hair, and it begins to tow a hot air balloon on its back. Ash, Misty, and Brock all go to jump in the hot air balloon, but Liza informs them that there was only room for two of them, and tells Ash to ride on his Charizard instead, like she was going to. Ash reveals, though, that he didn't know how to ride on his Charizard, which shocks Liza, who was already flying up in the air on hers. Like, how the fuck had Ash never flown a Charizard before if he owned one? Ash selects Charizard anyway, and asks for a ride, but Charizard refuses, since he knew that Ash wasn't an experienced rider, and he also wasn't used to having people on its back as well. Seeing that Charizard had refused Ash's request, Liza then steps in and taunts the Charizard a little bit, asking it if Ash was too heavy for it, knowing that this would make Charizard upset, to the point where he would let Ash ride him, also that Charizard could prove that Ash was in fact not too heavy for him. Liza's taunt works, and Charizard tells Ash to get on, but when he does, Ash stumbles and falls, and Charizard takes off anyways, not knowing that he had left Ash on the ground. Charizard then flies back to try again, and although Ash does successfully get on this time, he does prove to be a bit too heavy for Charizard at the moment, and this causes Charizard to flail around in the air. Although at least he doesn't crash. Meanwhile, in the hot air balloon, Misty was talking to Liza over a walkie-talkie, and Liza was basically telling her more about the Charcific Valley, informing her that all the Charizard, aside from her Charla, were wild, and also mentions that the reason why she was in Charcific Valley in the first place was to protect all the Charizard from potential poachers. Though, if they were truly that strong, then couldn't they protect themselves? I guess not if they're being nurtured, but the Charcific Valley wasn't really for nurturing. Just then, Ash and his Charizard had managed to catch up to Liza and her Charizard, not doing that bad of a job for their first time at flying. However, Liza didn't want to be shown up, so she then told her Charla to go faster, and she definitely did, blasting past Ash and Charizard. This angered Charizard to the point where he began flying out of control yet again, almost crashing down into the river that was located in between two canyons. Fortunately, Charizard was able to land on some stepping stones and bounce off them to take off into the air once again, although once it did, it quickly approached a nearby forest, having to dodge numerous trees. Charizard manages to dodge all the trees successfully, though shortly after falls into another canyon. Meanwhile, after hearing about the Charcific Valley from Ash and the gang, Team Rocket had decided to follow them, and were sliding down a mountain, planning to steal all the Charizard, obviously hoping that they were weaker than Ash's. As for Brock, Misty, and Liza, they finally approached Charcific Valley in the hot air balloon, and Brock and Misty were amazed at the view of the canyon below, and were also amazed at the Charizard statues, which had been carved into several rocks. Liza then explains the lore and purpose of Charcific Valley, which was a place where the Charizard had lived in peace for thousands of years, and the greatest Charizard in all of Pokemon history had originated from, as they had trained their entire lives there. Adding that the only form of training was battling against the other Charizard in the valley, and that they had very, very intense rivalries, and almost hatred for each other. Meanwhile, Ash and Charizard had now shown up at Charizard Valley, successfully getting under the canyon, and Misty instantly comments how she thought that even Ash's Charizard probably wouldn't be able to stand up to any of the wild ones in here, which pisses Charizard off as he proceeds to fire a flamethrower, wanting to prove his strength. This leads an unimpressed Liza and her Charla to scoff, stating that only weak Charizard tried to show off their strength, implying that bragging was for weaklings, and that Ash should train his Charizard some more so that it didn't feel the need to show off its strength like that. Only further proving Liza's point, Charizard then fires another flamethrower, still thinking that that would prove its strength to Liza. Even though this flamethrower obviously wouldn't have impressed Liza anyways, it definitely didn't help that the flamethrower lit Ash on fire by accident. Ash, also fed up with Liza and wanting to prove that Charizard didn't need more training, requested to battle her Charla. However, Liza informed Ash that he couldn't battle Charla since she had raised her, therefore she wasn't wild, stating that Ash could only battle wild Charizard. Ash decided to take the next best thing and accepted Liza's demands, as Liza opened the gates to Charizard Valley, revealing a whole bunch of wild Charizard who were significantly larger than Ash's, much to Ash's amazement. Liza, not thinking that Charizard would be able to handle one of the stronger ones, suggests that Ash battle the smallest one, although that one was still twice the size of Ash's Charizard. She also added that if Charizard was able to win, then she would permit it to stay at the valley, and therefore earn some more training like it needed. The battle begins as Charizard attempts to catch the smaller Charizard, well, smaller in comparison to the rest of the Charizard, and catch it off guard with a flamethrower. However, the wild Charizard simply inhales the flamethrower and fires it back at Charizard, which burns him and knocks him to the ground. Ash's Charizard had already lost, with only one attack. Damn. He didn't want anyone to think he was weak though, so he instantly got back up and shaked off the burns like they weren't there. This leads Liza to give Ash's Charizard another chance, as she insists that it battle a sleeping Charizard, stating that it was likely the gentlest of the entire group, so Charizard would stand a chance. Charizard instantly attacks with a flamethrower, but all this does is wake up the other Charizard, as it simply smashes Ash's Charizard into a cliff by using one whip of its tail. After seeing Charizard get his ass beat by the two weakest Charizard in the entire valley, Ash declares that it didn't matter to him, and that despite Charizard's weakness in comparison to the other Charizards, he still thought that he was strong, but insinuating that they should give up on the valley. However, Charizard was determined to prove itself and refused to give up, as it went back to the Charizard to attack it yet again. However, the Charizard simply responded with yet another whap of its tail, knocking Charizard down. Ash and the gang, not wanting to see the Charizard embarrass itself or get hurt, tell Charizard to forfeit the match, but Charizard still refuses, leading him to get knocked back even further as the Charizard stomped on him and kneed him through the gates and outside the valley. Charizard tries his best to climb back up to the valley with Ash and the gang watching. However, Liza takes the opportunity to close the valley gates, telling Ash that if his Charizard was weak enough to get literally knocked out of the valley, that was a sign that it should only come back when it had more training. The gates then close, much to Charizard's dismay, as Ash and the gang leave the valley with it. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had been observing Charizard's battles, and therefore came to the conclusion that there was no possible way that they could fucking steal all the wild Charizard if they were able to beat Ash's Charizard, who was able to beat them. Jesse then suggests that they use their new mech that looked like a robot boy. However, Team Rocket soon realizes that this mech was weak as fuck as well. Meowth really slept on this one, probably literally, so Jesse proceeds to name the mech the Gigantic Mistake. Back with Ash and the gang, Charizard really didn't want to be kicked out of the valley, so it proceeded to bang on the valley gates, demanding that it be let back in. Liza, getting annoyed with the constant noise, proceeded to open the gates, restating to Charizard the fact that it could only join the valley if it trained more. However, Charizard simply got angrier, leading Liza to give it one more chance, even letting it battle against her Charla. However, this proved to be a mistake, as Charizard was swiftly defeated, due to Charla grabbing him by one arm and tossing him effortlessly into the water, outside the gates. Proving Liza's point that Charizard in fact needed more training, she tells the Charizard that truly great Pokemon knew their limitations, telling him that he would never truly be strong if he couldn't accept that he was currently weak and needed more training. She simply demanded for Charizard to stay in the water until it came up with an idea to improve itself, as she shut the gates on it yet again. Charizard literally cried, begging to get in, wanting to prove itself to all the other Charizard, but Liza did not let it. Ash, Brock, and Misty were ready to go, telling Charizard that it could just train on its own, but Charizard was adamant on staying, as it really wanted to get into the valley, and stayed put in the water, just as Liza had told it, until nightfall. Ash, upon realizing what Charizard truly wanted, realized he was going to have to make a decision. Would he force Charizard to come back with him, or would he let Charizard stay at the valley and train by itself, since trainers weren't allowed in the valley? Ash debated this all night, as Team Rocket spied on them, with Meowth overhearing all of Charizard's literal cries and translating them to James and Meowth, stating that Charizard really wanted to be stronger. Hearing Charizard's wants, this even caused Jesse and James to cry. They obviously understood the feeling of wanting to be stronger more than anyone else in this damn anime, so they decided to put their differences with Ash aside and decide to help the Charizard get into the valley. When Ash and the gang fell asleep, still standing up outside due to not wanting to leave Charizard behind, Team Rocket put their plan into action as they threw rocks at Charizard all night long so that it would stay awake and not drown in the water or have its tail flame go out. Also during the night, Liza and Charla checked on Charizard through a hole in the gates and saw that it was still sitting in the water just as Liza had requested it to, and Liza was amazed by its dedication. The next morning, Ash woke up and had made his decision. If Liza permitted Charizard to stay, then he would let Charizard stay as well, stating that it would be wrong to get in Charizard's way of wanting to improve itself, reasoning that he would be mad if someone tried to stop him from improving himself. Just then, even though Team Rocket claimed that they weren't going to steal the wild Charizard, their robot boy mech that they hated so much proceeded to walk up to the Charizard Valley gates and try and break them open. This led Charizard to jump out of the water to defend the valley and fire a huge flamethrower at the mech, causing it to explode and send Team Rocket, who was inside, blasting off. Team Rocket were actually extremely happy as they blasted off, though, as they revealed that they weren't trying to steal the wild Charizard after all. This was actually just a part of their plan to help Charizard get into the valley. And their plan worked, because after Liza came out of the gates and saw that Charizard had saved them, she had decided to let Charizard join the valley. Ash questioned why Liza had changed her mind all of a sudden, with Liza revealing that through Charizard's dedication in the water all night long, and its assistance in saving the valley, Liza had realized that Charizard really wanted to get in, and was willing to improve itself. After seeing all of the Charizard fire flamethrowers in agreement with Liza, indicating that they wanted Charizard to join them, Ash decided to let Charizard join the valley, though he was very reluctant obviously, due to not wanting to release his partner. When Charizard saw the sad look on Ash's face, he began to debate himself if he should really stay in the valley, or if he should stay with Ash. Ash didn't want Charizard to limit itself just to please him, so he proceeded to hide his face and yell at Charizard that he should stay in the valley, and that he didn't want a weak Charizard anyway, coldly telling Charizard he had a lot of improving to do, as Ash ran away, with tears now streaming down his face. He didn't want to have to be rude to Charizard, but if it was the only way to make him stay, then he had to. As he ran, with Brock and Misty behind him, he said goodbye to Charizard, at least in his head, hoping that Charizard wouldn't forget him, and they would be able to meet again. And next time, Charizard would be even stronger. Pikachu then says his own goodbye to Charizard, as politely as possible. After seeing Pikachu be polite to him, he realized Ash's true intention of being rude to him, which was only to motivate him to stay. Because if Ash truly hated Charizard now, then Pikachu wouldn't like him either. So, upon realizing that Ash just had his best interest at heart, Charizard bid Ash farewell by roaring and firing a flamethrower into the sky, doing so as a way of promising to Ash that it would get as strong as possible.